So if you've followed this channel for any amount of time, you'll probably be aware of the fact that I love older digital cameras. There's so many aspects of these systems that camera manufacturers got right back in the day, and right now, for photography at least, the Nikon D200 is a camera that I just can't put down. It's got a few specific features that set it apart from other older cameras that I've used in the past, and honestly, it's kind of blown me away. So I always find that owning a camera can roughly be split into two parts: the experience of using it on a day-to-day basis, and then the image output at the end. For me, the D200 has been ticking all of these boxes, and there's definitely something about the way it operates and the deep colours that are coming out of this CCD sensor that make it really addictive to use. One thing I absolutely love about these older Nikon DSLRs is that they can utilise older AIS lenses without the need to purchase any kind of adapter. I've been using the D200 with a few different lenses, the 28mm 2.8, the Nikon 60mm 2.8 macro lens, but most of all with the 50mm AIS pancake lens, and I've honestly been absolutely astounded at how nice the images are coming out of this tiny little pancake lens. People often complain that manually focusing with older DSLRs is really difficult, but with the D200 I'm finding it easier than ever, since Nikon have a few dedicated features. Firstly, there's a specific manual focus assist dot in the bottom left of the viewfinder, which starts to flicker as you get closer to correct focus, and then becomes constant once it's fully achieved. This is great, but I've also taken it one step further by installing a split focus screen within the camera itself, which essentially allows me to focus it like an older film camera. Honestly, it's been an absolute game changer. It was really easy to install, and I picked this one up super cheap from Amazon. There's a link in the description if you fancy trying this out for yourself. Another feature of these older Nikon cameras is that you're actually able to map your vintage or manual lens to the camera itself in the menu. By inputting the focal distance along with the maximum aperture, the camera can decipher which f-stop the lens is at, and it displays it within the viewfinder but also on the top LCD. So with this setup I get the full experience of using these manual lenses, but also with the joy of using an optical viewfinder, which ultimately is my favourite way to photograph. I just find it much more organic than using an electronic viewfinder where you're having to use focus peaking or optical zoom features to achieve critical focus. And I also forgot how nice it is to actually shoot with a 50mm lens on an APS-C body. After the APS-C crop, you're looking at around about a 75mm focal length, which compresses the image slightly, but it's also wide enough for most scenes. I also find that the crop on the sensor cuts out some of the nastiness around the edges that you tend to get when shooting wide open on a full frame body, but you also retain a really nice depth of field, which is something I think I miss out on slightly when shooting with my micro four thirds cameras. Next, I want to talk about image quality because of course it is important. I think by now we've established that resolution isn't really a blocker for capturing, editing and printing beautiful images. If anything, I found that higher megapixel counts actually have the opposite effect for me, and right now I'm drawn to cameras with larger sensors but lower megapixel counts. So for me, the D200's 10 megapixel CCD sensor is perfect. I've never been a straight out of camera JPEG sort of person, but I've got to admit the files straight out of the D200 are beautiful. I've posted a number of these on my Instagram just with small adjustments to white balance, exposure and contrast, and they look amazing. Of course, it also shoots RAW and the files handle beautifully in Lightroom. The way it responds to grading almost reminds me of the way the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera looks, with colours that are both muted and saturated at the same time, with beautiful smooth contrast between the darkest blacks and the lightest whites. All of the images from the Nikon have been edited using my new revamped film emulation pack, which I'm super excited to be releasing in the next couple of weeks, along with a video tutorial on how to use the pack for optimal results. This new pack is much more modular than the original, with a whole new colour film profile, along with additional film curves, film stocks, and film grain options to choose from. So by modern standards, the screen on the back of the D200 isn't anything special, but honestly I find it much more inspiring than those high-res screens where you're able to pixel peep in camera. It provides a good enough preview of what you've shot with good color rendition. It kind of reminds me of the thumbnails you get from your scanner when you're scanning a roll of film. The fact that it's pretty small gives me more of a reason not to look at it, and sometimes I even slip a piece of paper under the screen cover to block it off completely. All of the functions of the camera can be controlled from the top dials anyway, and this brings me back to my original point around how camera manufacturers got it so right back in the day, because the ergonomics of this camera are unbelievably good. Everything can be adjusted via the LCD screen on the top, and there's an exposure compensation button next to the shutter button alongside a mode dial for changing between automatic, manual, shutter priority and aperture priority. The camera's magnesium alloy construction makes it feel really good in the hand, and on the left side of the camera is a set of 3 buttons which you can use for amending your ISO, picture quality and white balance. There's no need to dig through lots of different menu settings to map out tons of different function buttons, and it's this simplicity that really makes the shooting experience with a D200 feel incredibly organic. I can genuinely use this in the same way as I would an actual film camera, focus on the process and just enjoy making photographs. So I don't know about you, but I have fully fallen in love with this camera over the last few months. When you take it back to the basics, you start to realise that you really don't need much in photography. But of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. If there's any other older cameras that you're using at the moment, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.